video was the fact is, he listened to you. You're here. Only you know your individual story on how ugly it really was. And no matter what degree of faith you had, the fact is that, in one way, shape, or form, each and every one of us prayed something and God listened. He listened. Because I shouldn't be here today. I shouldn't be able to do what I do today with my track record. I've been through 11 treatments, on and off again. I know how to get sober, but I didn't know how to stay sober. I knew how to, and I certainly didn't know how to stay free and get free until I got around the right people. And that's one thing that Scotty says often: in order to be a man, you got to see a man. See, God puts examples around us. So, the bottom line is you need to be following an example. And the bottom line is when you're following an example, nobody's perfect. See, a lot of us are trained in our carnal minds to look at what's wrong versus what's right. And the bottom line is this, like I said last week about, doing your fifth step, the fact is that, we all have trust issues. And I said, well, you're looking for the holes in people, why you can't trust them. Well, typically with addicts and alcoholics, the holes that people have in them are from the gun that we shot at them. So, you can talk your way out of anything. And that being said, we're still on the regiment of 3 calls a week. And if you don't make the 3 calls, how many are strong starters in here? How many don't finish very often? See, we need these guidelines, we need these regulations, we need to be this hardcore in this boot camp of 12 weeks due to the fact that at the end of the day, my track record is to fizzle out. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes for a minute, but sure enough, that's like I was saying in that radio interview. Treatment is one thing, but the transition out of treatment is a whole different thing. It's just as or more important than treatment itself. Because once you get 30 days, 60 days under your belt, you think life is good again. You're dead wrong, because Freddie ain't dead. Freddie's going to keep rising his head up. The addict's going to come at you. The flesh is going to torment you. The devil wants you dead. The bottom line is, so 3 calls a day. If you haven't done your 5th step by now, you have until Friday to do it. And if you choose not to do it, you might as well just totally not do the rest of the steps, because you can't go from 3 to 7. It don't work. I've tried it 100 times. In fact, I go to 1 to 9. I admit I was a drug addict and I was powerless. Then I start making amends to everybody just to repeat the same mistakes again. How many have done that? How many have done that? So the key is that we follow protocol, which all of us hate to do. We do what we don't want to do. We take direction. And so I strongly encourage you to get the 5th step. I'll be doing it with about 7 guys tomorrow. I've already done some already, and it truly is a liberating process. It's truly a blessing. Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for putting inside of me that I could not put inside myself. That's you. Lord, I thank you for doing things that I cannot even come close to doing. Lord, I thank you for the powerful movement that you're having in our midst right now. Lord, I thank you that you are a man of your word. You're not the great I was or I'm going to be. You're the great I am. Lord, I ask that you remove me from the building. Lord, I thank you for allowing us to be in such a precious building. The building that my pastor has, that the man that helped and saves my life on a daily basis. It just wasn't a one-time event. Lord, I ask that you do things tonight that haven't been done before, and I thank you in advance for doing it. In your name we pray, amen. So Sunday we talked about plans, and I want to just real briefly hit on how that correlates with your recovery. In 2 Timothy, it says, God saved you because you are part of his plan. Now it says, for God saved us and called us to holy life. Now, a lot of us have tried to get sober. Now the word holy freaks us out. Holy in its own freaks a guy like me out. So, the bottom line is, I'm not holy, God is. But that's why the bottom line is that I got to work the steps in order to remove this stuff out of me, and God is the one, with my participation, that will remove. And as I said last week, I'll do about 20, I'll give it my 100%. He'll do far more than what I'm doing, because he'll always, as he promises in his word, he'll always why we have many people in the room tonight that aren't even in recovery, but everybody's recovering from something that they can benefit. So we're called to the holy life. He did this, not that we deserved it. Now, if you or I would have gotten what we deserved, I don't care how bad your consequences are right now, you still didn't get what was coming to you. Right? See, a lot of times we get the woe of me. We've learned that we like to use self-pity as a comforting thing. And the fact is, at the end of the day, we've got to come to the realization that we didn't get what we deserved. I mean, here I sit, and I'm not just sitting here just, oh, I'm sober now. No, God has a huge life, the holy life. Now it says, because that was His plan from the beginning of time. See, God has had a plan for each and every one of us. We just didn't participate in it. Now it goes on to show us His grace through Christ Jesus. Now, if you ever were to think how messed up you and I really were, and the power of God in you and me is His grace, like Scotty said, well, the bottom line is this. Somebody can look at your life, and they do it all the time in your recovery. They can say, man, God is powerful. Why did He spare that person? Why can they go back and get a job like nothing ever happened? Why do they always get back up on their feet when they totally destroy their life? God wants to show the power of His grace through you. You shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. See, that gets people's attention. That's what you're seeing at the church. You're seeing a movement of God. Now in Psalm 33:11, our failures have not disqualified us from His plan. I don't care. God doesn't care what you've done to this day. It still won't disqualify you from His plan that He had long ago for you. So quit using it as an excuse. You might have did it, but you're not in it. If you're walking with God, you're a new creation. The old is gone and the new has come. But the key is if you don't work the steps, the old is still here. And it's hard for the new to come. See, what it's saying here, now check this out. But the Lord's plans stand firm forever. See, God doesn't change His mind about you. You change your mind about Him. God still, no matter before you started using it, His plan has not changed. And it's still intact. The question is, will you step up to the plate? Now it says His intentions can never be shaken. See, I mean, if we were to walk with God long ago, but again, God works everything together for the good. We learned that in Romans 8:28. We've been hitting that hard lately. But I mean, God's intentions are not to harm you. I've been doing a lot of fifth steps lately. People that have been harmed. That wasn't God. That was people. God gives people free will. And the key is that His intentions can never be shaken. So God's plan for you, in spite of your and I's mistakes and our disasters and our hasn't changed. That's why you're here. Why are you here? It's not just to get sober, even though it starts with sobriety. Jeremiah 29:11. Before we got sober, we had no future and hope. You remember that? Hopeless. See, today you should be a dopeless hope fiend. See, God switches the tables. See, but before, I remember what it's like to say, I'll never get out of this. My future's gone. I have no hope. I'm an 11-time loser. I stay sober for 6 months, fall flat on my face again. Something's wrong with me. I just can't seem to get with the program. But before God stepped in again and again and again and again for me, I was sitting in the same position with no future or hope. But God says, no, that's not what I have for you. He says, for I know. See, the problem is, He knows and we don't. You think you know, but you don't. If you knew, you'd live differently. See, it's not about what we know, it's about what He knows. And you got to get to know Him to a degree so you know too much about Him not to doubt Him. And that's what's so critical, but it's about getting out of your own way, as it says right here, for I know the plans I have for you, but all of us have our own plans for ourselves. My best thinking got me here, and I'm a thinker. Boy, I could think myself right out of the backseat of a courtroom or a cop car, but because it was my thinking and my plan, but He says, I have for you. See, we need to participate in God's plan for us. Part of God's plan for us is working the steps. Part of your plan and my plan is the shortcut. Half measures is the big big book says. And it says that, for they are plans of good and not for disaster. How many people were full of disaster when they got here? You didn't get here because it was all going well, because we followed our own plans. And it says, his plans are for the good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. You know, the latter is much more important than the former. It doesn't matter what age you are. The best of your life can be the best of your life. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. The key here is you have a future and a hope. Will you walk on that path? The only one that will disqualify you from that path is you. Because God already says here that He has plans for you. If He hasn't proven that to you by now, what else is it going to take? What does He have to do to get your and I's attention? How many times did I fall flat on my face, get picked up, get sent around the right people in a meeting or a church, just to give it one more chance? I don't know how many chances I got left. You hear me say this often. I know I have another relapse in me. I don't know about another recovery. It was not easy to get back on my feet again. But He had a plan for both you and I. Now what it says this, Psalm 119:26. We need to learn how to live out His plans. That's what Scotty said. We get sober and we don't know how to live. We don't have a drug or a drinking problem. We've got a living and a coping problem. We don't know how to cope. We don't know how to process. How many times did you hear the word process in these steps? But it says, I told you my plans, and you answered. See, no matter where you are, you're here tonight, and you did answer. There's something inside of you that you said, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And I commend you on that. But now it says, now teach me your decrees. See, it's one thing when you believe that God has a plan for your life. It's another thing that you stop the madness and you believe that He might. But it's a whole different thing if you're willing to learn His ways. By learning to live in His ways, you need to be taught. You need to be around people. In Jeremiah 10:23, it says, it's not about your plan, it's about His. It says, I know, Lord, that our lives are not our own. It isn't about you anymore. You got to understand, it's not about you. It's not about what you intend to do. It's about Him, and it's about His plans. And it says, you're not your own. Let me tell you about, you're bought with a price. And you got to get out of your own way. And it says, we are not able to plan our own course. How many times have you planned your own course, are tempted? The Bible's very clear. It says, you're not even able to, so quit trying. When you try to do it, you end up back in situations and worse. What do they teach us in trivia? You pick up where you left off and worse. Well, that's certainly true. But it says you're not able to plan your own course. Now, that's humbling, per Josh's question. That's humbling. I'm 35 at the time. I should be an adult. And I'm not able to plan my own course. You don't have to be an addict. This Bible is written for everybody. Nobody on this planet is able to plan their own course. See, you can be a successful business person and enjoy the worldly success while your children are falling by the wayside. See, God has got to plan your course. And that's why He puts us in programs like this. That's why He gives us the basic instructions before leaving Earth. That's why He gives us people that care enough about us here. So I want you to really look at that. You're not able to. And that's a level of humility. I am blessed beyond the curse, and I'm still not able to plan my own course. I do the things that God tells me to do. My pastor tells me, Proverbs 16:9, freedom depends on following the steps to freedom. And let me be very clear with you, freedom isn't free. You got to work for it. I mean, anybody that's free, you should ask them what it cost them. It costs them a lot. And it says we make our plans. See, a lot of times, because we're prideful, nobody ever knows what you're planning. You won't tell anybody what you're thinking. You won't tell anybody what you're planning. People have got to find out after the fact about what you were planning. That's not integrity. Why do we do that? Because we're ashamed about what we're planning. See, people like me, all of a sudden I disappear, I do this, I do this. Even in my recovery, I do that. But it says right here, it says we make our and that's what I'm going to do in my recovery. You got to understand that God determines your step. Now, you can step outside of what He determined for you, but if you're honest with yourself, how has that gone for you in your past? It's like Scotty says, I hear people all the time, I got to get my own place. What is so bad about being here? I mean, you got your family back, you got your finances back, you got your freedom back, I think you just got a car, your license back, but it's so terrible. I mean, the more infrastructure you have in your life, the more accountability, the more free you are. Now, with the wrong mindset, you'll think, well, I don't need it, I'm a grown man. Oh, really? You were 35 and homeless. You hear me say this all the time. All I had was I was giving Bobby a hard time about he almost snagged me last week. Bobby's a servant, and he was taking out the trash on Wednesday night. I said, is that your luggage? Because that's what my luggage used to look like. Everything I owned was in a plastic bag at 35 years old. See, I gotta pay attention that I can't make my own plans, and the Lord determines my steps. Now in Proverbs 20:18, it says, we need to follow direction from a spiritual advisor. Check this out now in verse 18. It says, plans succeed through good counsel. Isn't it something that you'll go get advice from somebody who's going to tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear? There's a difference between counsel and good counsel. See, a lot of us, we learned that at a very young age. If Dad wouldn't give us the answer we wanted, we went to Mom. See, we know how to play it. But the key is, it says, plans succeed through good counsel. That means you got to run things through and by people. I'm doing that years later, and that's why I am where I am. Now check out what it says here. Don't go to war without wise advice. Who are you in war with? Yourself. You're arguing with yourself all day, every day. That's why we need somebody to help us with the perspective, and the fact is that we need counsel. So part of walking out the plans that God has for you is, the bottom line is this: you need somebody to tell you what to do. That stings, it hurts. It's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. It's the very truth that will set you free. You start calling your own shots again, you start planning your own course again, you ain't going to think what it's going to end up, But you would think with your track record and my track record, we should know this by now, but when the flesh starts to override the spirit, it's a whole different ballgame. Now in Psalm 45, it says, God will always exceed your expectations. You hear me say this all the time. When I was at Teen Challenge 10 years ago, if I would have told God the 100 things I wanted from Him in my life, I would have shortchanged Him 1,000-fold. God will always give you more if you walk out His plan and not yours. You're talented enough without character to go get what you think you want and need. You'll get it, and you'll realize that this isn't what I thought it was, and you'll get high anyway, and then there'll be that many more things to lose because you spent all your effort and energy on your plan to restore your family when you're not part of His plan, and then it's all gone again.
Yeah, say that.
All gone again. What a waste of time. What a waste of energy. What a waste of my family's emotions. You think it's tough, when I tell them I can't come over because I got to go to church. That's disheartening to them. But it's a whole different ballgame when I got to call them collect from jail. Either way, there's going to be pain. But it goes on to say, now check this out. Oh, the Lord my God, who will perform many wonders for us. A lot of us, the fact that you're above ground and out of prison, you better give God the praise that He performed a wonder for you. And now you're tripping about some $5 problem. God got a crack pipe out of your mouth and you're all freaked out about $5. See, we need a reality check. I mean, God has already performed many wonders for you and me. It says your plans for us are too numerous. Let me tell you, if you're part of this family, you better buckle your seatbelt because God is just getting started. And the sad thing is, some people will leave, come back years later and say, man, I wish I would have stuck it out. Everybody, I left, they were smiling, and now they're really smiling when I walk back in the door. See, because God wants you in it to win it. He wants you to take your sandals off and stay a while. Maybe stay, for me, I'm in it forever. And it says now, and one day at a time I'm in it forever. Because I know myself. It says, your plans for us are too numerous to list. You have no equal. See, we don't give God enough praise for what He's already done in our lives. Because only God could have got me out of the dope house. Only God could have got me off the streets. Only God could have restored my family. But I've learned to walk in His plans. Now it says, I try to recite all your wonderful deeds. So when you begin begin walking out God's plan for your life, you won't even be able to remember all the good things He's done for you. I would never come to the end of them. The reason why you won't be able to remember everything He's done for you, because He's doing more stuff every day. I mean, and that's so true. What's happening in our midst right now, now it says in Isaiah 46:10, God will not lose His reputation over you. It says, only I can tell you the future before it happens. Every plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish. Now, if you work it, it'll work you, and it will work. God is not going to lose His reputation over you, but it ain't your plan. It's His plan. Any deviation from His plan, you will pay dearly for it. Then you got to ask yourself, what's so bad about His plan? Why don't we jump on board with His plan? That's why you got to work the steps. You got to get an answer to that. You got to get an answer of why you think so lowly of yourself that you won't work on yourself. I go to the prisons and jails and I see these prideful guys. I was one of them. They're full of insecurity and fear. And they think they're tough. I see it in the program. I see, and I've been one of those guys. And now what it says in Ephesians 2:10, SBCC and SB are God's masterpiece, and you can be too. It says we are God's masterpiece. See, you want to be a part of His masterpiece. That God took a bunch of nobodies and created a church. God took a bunch of nobodies and created a transitional program. He took what the devil tried to destroy and turned it in for the good. It says He created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do good things He planned. See, the bottom line is this, that God knows what He's doing. What He says, the steps of what we're working on now are not going to lose their reputation over you. They are designed to work if you work them. They are of God. This Bible here, it's living and active, and it's sharper than a double-edged sword. Pick it up. It shouldn't be sitting on your desk or your shelf or under your bed. But now it says in Proverbs 16:3, the question is, can you stay committed? All of us are great talkers. One of these days I will implement a video of people when they move in here. And tell me that they're willing to do whatever it takes. I'm putting this on the back burner, I'm putting this on the back burner. Recovery's number one. Within months, weeks, days, recovery is number 3, 10, 12. It says, commit your actions to the Lord and your plans will succeed. Participate in His plan, which is laid out in front of you tonight. And all your plans. You know what? If you're part of His plan, your plans will change. Your plans will totally change. And now if we talk about, everybody hold up your 6th step. We're going to go through it quick. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now the 6th step is very important that you really acknowledge it for what it is. And it says that we are entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, it doesn't say in this step, it just means you've got to be ready. See, the treatment community says, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. My pastor says, I'm sick of me. How many are sick of themselves? So we've got to look at this. It says, we are entirely ready to have God. How many of you have tried to change yourselves? It don't work. That's your plan to change you. You're trying to do what we say on Sunday. God's got a responsibility and you have a responsibility. It says to have God remove all these defects of character. When you're doing your 4th and 5th step, you're learning what your character defects are. You're learning how you look at things. You're learning different things. Now what it says is, we begin working step 6 full of hope we've developed in the first 5 steps. If we have been through, we also have developed some humility. In step 6, humility means that we're able to see ourselves more clearly. If you work a good 4th and 5th, you're going to be able to look at your life and yourself a lot differently. That's the common denominator I've gotten this week from all the people I've done it with. We've seen the exact nature of our wrongs. We've seen how we've harmed ourselves and others by acting on our defects of character. We've seen the patterns of our behavior, and we've come to understand how are likely to act on the same defects over and over. Now we have become entirely ready to have our defects of character removed. It's not that you want to relapse or get high, it's the fact that these defects of character are running your life. They own you. Becoming entirely ready won't happen in an instant. See, I'm grateful I got the tar kicked out of me. I'm grateful that I went as low as I went. Because I probably wouldn't have been entirely ready. That's why I had to go to 11 treatments. That pain within me made me entirely ready. And you know what? Because of that, I don't have any regrets. I'm grateful tonight that I got as low as I went, so I would become entirely ready. And to me, that's a blessing. And it says, immediately following an inventory, we may feel very ready indeed to have our defects removed. If we've been around for a while and are generally pretty well aware of what the defects are, we still act on one of them, we'll naturally find our willingness level rises. So you don't want to be that person anymore. You're sober now and you don't want to be like you were before you started using and while you were using. You had these feelings before you picked up as a young child. And that's what these steps are designed to look at. Awareness alone will never be enough to ensure our readiness, but it's a necessary first step in the path of readiness. The inventory process itself has raised our awareness about the character defects. Working the sixth step will do even more. To be entirely ready is to reach a spiritual state where we are not just aware of our defects, not just tired of them, not just confident that God of our understanding will remove what should go, but these things. In order to become entirely ready, we'll need to address our fears about the sixth step. We'll also need to take a look at how our defects will be removed. The sixth step says that our higher power can remove them, but what does it mean in practical terms? What is our responsibility in the sixth step? These questions, when reviewed with the sponsor, will help us give us direction in working this step. Entirely ready for what? If we're new, and this is our first experience with the sixth step, many of our character defects will be so blatant that an immediate reaction will likely be one overwhelming willingness to get rid of them. We're seeing them for the first time in all their glory, so to speak, we want them gone today. Once we've gotten past our initial reaction, we'll find that we probably have at least some measure of fear or uncertainty about changing. The unknown is terrifying for almost everyone. We've had the defects we're about to go for a long time, probably most of our lives. The second page. Now this is on this. For instance, we're still insecure. How many people are still insecure? A lot of you overcompensate. I do, because I'm so insecure. I won't let you know I'm insecure. You know what? You know where I see insecurity show up most? When somebody won't listen. Rebellion and insecurity is pride. It says we no longer run around indulging in a series of transparent attempts to convince others that we're big shots, but we still have the defect. The way we've been acting on it lately is far more subtle and more intuitive. I don't know how to say that word. We might have been unconsciously sabotaging the efforts of others so that we can look better by comparison or trampling on someone else's desires because they don't directly serve our own needs. To have God removed. Yes, the sixth step specifies that only power greater than ourselves can remove our defects of character. Now, let me talk to you about a power greater than yourself. I need the power of Jesus to remove my defects of character. Not the power of some thought bubble. Because I got strong defects of character. However, the extent to which most of us grasp what it actually means is directly influenced by how much experience we have in the up and down, on and off again struggle and surrender associated with step 6. The first thing most of us do about our character defects is to decide not to have them. Unfortunately, this is futile. About the effective as attempting to control our using. How many people have tried to control their using? We may have some apparent success for a time, but our defects will eventually resurface. The problem is that our defects are part of us. We will also be subject to reverting to our worst character defects and struggle. Isn't that something when you get your back against the wall, the worst side of you comes out? See, that's something we got to look at. It says, what we need to do in the sixth step is much like what we had to do in the first two steps. We We had to admit that we had been defeated by an internal force, your flesh and the devil, that has brought nothing but pain, degradation to our lives. Then we have to admit we need to help dealing with that force. We must completely accept the fact that we cannot remove our own shortcomings. We must prepare ourselves to ask in the 7 steps for God to remove them from us. Isn't it something in this NA workbook that goes back from God to higher power? You're going to hear the word God more. Because your higher power can't do what God can. It says, even after all the work we've done in the 4th and 5th steps, we're still not entirely clear at this point about the nature of our defects of character. We're probably wondering where precisely our character defects and our character begins within the complex structure of our own personality. Why do we do the things we do? Is it someone's fault? When did we first feel this way? Why, how, and where? If we're not careful, we'll become so self-obsessed that we'll lose sight of why we're working 6th step. We need to focus our efforts. Our goal is to raise our own awareness of our character defects so that we can become entirely ready to have them removed. Not to analyze our origin or indulge in a bout of self-absorption. See, we can't be victims. We just want to be free. Our character defects are indicators of our basic nature. We are likely to find that we have the same basic nature as anyone else. We have needs and we try to get them met. For instance, we need love. How we go about getting love is where our defects come into play. We lie, we cheat, we harm others, we degrade ourselves to get love. We are acting in our defects. As defined in how it works and why, our defects are basic human traits that have been distorted from our self-centeredness. With our sponsor's help, we list each defect we have, describe the ways in which we act on it, look at how it affects our lives, and very importantly, find out what we're feeling when we practice it. Imagining what our life would look like without each defect will help us see that we can live without them. Some of us take practical action by finding out what the opposite spiritual principle would be for each character defect. Spiritual principles. In the 6th step, we will focus on a commitment to perseverance, willingness, faith, trust, and self-acceptance. At this point in the 6th step work, we should be acutely aware of our shortcomings. In fact, we're probably so aware of them in the course of our daily lives, we can see them coming and even stop ourselves from acting on them much of the time. At times, our awareness may fade. We may no longer be diligent in watching our behavior. It takes an incredible amount of energy to monitor ourselves every second and curb every impulse to act out. We'll relax into everyday life until all of a sudden we'll be left feeling sick and ashamed, wondering how, after all the work we've done, we could have possibly done that again. However, we do not give up. Instead, we make a commitment to our recovery. We maintain our newly emerging principles despite our setback. We keep taking steps forward even though we're taking one more backward. We're looking for gradual improvement, not instant hopelessness. It says applying the spiritual principle of willingness means very simply that we're willing to act differently. It does not necessarily mean that we will act differently even when we're capable of doing so. We can perhaps best illustrate the attitude by example. So suppose we've been dishonest with our families, our employers, our friends. In many ways, ranging from a minor to the severe. Well, it seemed better to be willing in layers, focusing our willingness on the worst or most destructive forms of dishonesty first. This step says that we're entirely ready to have all our defects removed. That means being willing never to be dishonest again, even in a minor way. This may seem like more than we can expect of ourselves, but we only have to do it today. Just think about not being dishonest for a day. Check out what it says now. It's hard to have, one way to be dishonest is think that you don't have to work the steps. That's lying to yourself. It's hard to have this kind of willingness, especially when the apparent consequences for mild dishonesty aren't so severe. We may be aware that we're not being entirely honest, but we think we're not hurting anyone, we're getting away with it, so why be concerned about it? But it's that kind of thinking that has perhaps the most severe spiritual consequences. It may turn out that no one is obviously harmed by your dishonesty, and that no one ever finds out. But the dishonesty reverberates in the spirits from then on. All it starts with a little yeast to work through the whole dough. It's very important that we look at that. Even if we're not consciously aware of it, even if we can sleep just fine at night, the result of acting on a defect when we have the ability not to be impairment of our spiritual growth. If we continue being unwilling, we'll eventually paralyze the spiritual growth. It says, the amount of willingness we have to develop in the step requires a corresponding amount of faith and trust. We have to believe that higher power is going to work in our lives the exact degree that it's necessary. Continuing with the example of dishonesty, we have to trust that our higher power isn't going to remove the defect of dishonesty from our lives to such a degree that we become brutally honest, incapable of remaining silent, even when speaking the truth would hurt somebody. As long as we get out of the way so that God can work in our lives, we'll experience the exact degree of spiritual growth we need. With words like entirely and all playing such a prominent role in the step, it's easy to become overly self-critical and perfectionistic. We need to remember that even our willingness must be complete. We're not going to become perfect, not today, not ever. When we act our defect against our will, we need to practice the principle of self-acceptance. We need to accept that while we're still capable of acting out, we're also still willing to change. With that acknowledgement, we renew our commitment to be changed. We've grown exactly as much as we're supposed to for today. If we're perfect, we would have no further need to grow. Moving on. We have had fleeting glimpses in the past of what we could become. Maybe during childhood, maybe during our active addiction. We probably thought either that life didn't put us in a place where we could become what we dreamed of, or that we just innately incapable of rising to a higher place. We once have dreamed of money, status, or position. In the spiritual program, we're more concerned with spiritual growth. We want to think about qualities which we had, or about other people we know in recovery who have the qualities we wish we could emulate. As we work this step, we begin developing a vision of the person we'd like to become. If we have been selfish, we probably have vision of becoming selfless. Maybe by helping another addict find recovery, or by some other act of selfless giving. If we've been lazy, we can see ourselves becoming productive and reaping the rewards of our efforts. If we've been dishonest, we may have a dream of freedom that would be ours when we no longer have to spend so much time worrying about being found out. We want to get from this step the vision of ourselves and a sense of hope that we can attain that vision. This vision can be our inspiration. Recalling it during the times when we feel despair, or when it seems to be taking a long time to reach our goals, will sustain us and help us renew our willingness. Our vision is a springboard into step 7, where we're asked the God of our understanding to remove our... So this step, how willing are you? Let me tell you something. God just gave me something else. When I grew up, it's not easy reading like I just read. I'm not a reader. I would never get up in front of anybody to read. Early in my AA meetings, I hated when they had me read. I was so shy. I was so petrified. I thought you might judge me, but God had a different plan. See, God will give you things that you didn't even think were inside of you. No matter where you think you are tonight, God's got a different plan for you. You're not shy. You're not full of anxiety. You're not full of fear. You are what you think you are. And if you are what you think you are, you're not what God thinks you are. It's a critical time that we step into our destiny. And let me tell you one thing about your destiny. Your history does not dictate your destiny. Your past does not dictate your future. The rest of your life will be the best of your life. The only thing that stands in the way is not God, not your family, not your present, not your past. It's you. You need to start looking at you. We'll take a 10-minute break.